Hello, and thank you for taking this course about how to smile, dial, and pile up your sales. This is Brian Judd, and I'll be your instructor in this class. I've had a lot of experience using a telephone. First of all, on as a sales manager, marketing and sales manager, and salesperson, did a lot of telephone work to set appointments and to do the follow up. And I've also done a lot of or been a guest on a lot of radio shows using a telephone. So we'll be talking about some of the things I've experienced, some of the things that I've done and learned over the years, and how we can help you do a lot more with the telephone, become more productive. I think certainly. So we're looking at different ways to use the telephone. And it's not just you don't sell over the telephone. You do the things that help you sell books in the long run, but you can use the telephone for making appointments, for prospecting, for doing the follow up, and for just for networking or doing radio shows. So we'll be looking at a variety of ways in which you can use the phone. So it's not for selling; it's for a lot of the other complementary activities. So we'll be looking at successful techniques that I've experienced, I've used, I've actually trained people on how to do that, and also how to perform on radio shows using the telephone. Just some very brief tips because there is another course on Bookselling University about how to do just that. For it's a complete hour course for that. And telephone marketing is not the same as telemarketing. Telemarketing is that thing that everybody doesn't like. Dinner time, somebody calls up and tries to sell you something. Where telephone marketing is working with professionals, with business people, with people you're networking with, but it's a very professional way to use the telephone for a variety of uses. And then the importance of attitude. A lot of people just don't like using a telephone, but we'll talk about how you can become more familiar with it and how you no longer have to pick up that 200-pound phone and become more productive, and the end result will be selling more books. So there's a variety of ways in which you can contact your prospect. These are prospective buyers, and we're looking at primarily non-bookstore buyers. These could be corporate buyers and associations and schools and military, or it might be distributors for retailers such as bookstores or for airport stores or discount stores or gift shops. So your prospects can be in a variety of different places, not just in bookstores. And you may be calling bookstores too to arrange your store events and your signings. But you can contact a lot of people in a short period of time using email or direct mail. But the ability to interact is low. You can't get a response from people when they receive it. Many times you don't even know who received it, or if they opened it once they did, or just deleted it. So you play by the numbers. You send out a lot of emails or direct mail pieces, hoping that some will result in a response. On the other hand, personal sales calls, you can reach many fewer people, but the quality of the interaction is much higher. You can talk with people, you can listen for their attitudes, you can listen for their responses, you can ask questions to direct the conversation. We're looking at a little bit later. But the telephone actually has the best trade-off of the quality and quantity of contact, that you can call more people than not as many as well, more people than you can with a personal sales call, certainly. But you still have some quality of contact where you have that interaction and you can have a conversation instead of just a correspondence just telling people all about your book. So why use a telephone? Again, it's not for selling, but for networking or performing on radio shows, making appointments. These are things that you can do without a lot of anxiety. You can just talk with people, particularly the networking, and you're talking with your friends. And when you're doing the follow-up, it's very important after the sale is made to a corporate buyer, if they buy 10,000 of your books, then you need to certainly do the follow-up to make sure that everything is going along as promised. You call the printer to make sure that the customization was done, that the books are being printed and will be shipped on time, and you contact the buyer to let the buyers know that you have done all this follow up to make sure that everything is delivered on time and as promised. Gathering information is very important. When you first contact a prospective client, you meet with that person, and or you do use the telephone to find out about uh, what problems they're having, how your content can help them solve their problems, and where your presentation will be made, who will be there, what are these people like, what are their predispositions to using books as premiums? What are the objectives for the advertising or the marketing campaign that's coming up and using your book? So we look at each one of these for more information, but just to get the overview here, how you can use it for prospecting and certainly the getting away from. I've always done it that way. That's probably the biggest hindrance to large sales. That people just sell through bookstores. They don't think about some of these other ways of doing it. And the telephone is part of an assorted promotional mix. So some people just do what they feel comfortable with, which may be social networking, but they don't get all the value of the other elements of the promotional tools you can use. So the telephone just becomes part of that mix, and it's something that it's I look at it as a portfolio of promotional tools, and you really need to well, you can spend a lot of money on it, or you can spend less money and be more effective if you're doing things right. And so certain promotional techniques have short-term or long-term impact. Some are just for exposure, and some for actual sales, and for getting the signature on the dotted line for more of your selling your books. So if you can use the telephone, if you look at the bottom left corner, the short-term sales impact can be direct mail or selling through retailers or email blasts, selling books at the back of the room after your presentations. And the telephone is part of that. So it's a way to use it in addition to direct mail or to email blasts. They certainly don't exclude those just because you don't have the interactive capability, but you can use those to generate leads, and then you follow up with the telephone. But you see the personal selling is a long-term sales opportunity. But telephoning fits in this is a major part of your sales effort. It certainly can have impact on your short-term revenue, which is important because if you certainly do want to make it in the long term, but you have to get some revenue in the short term in order to reach the long term. So these things can help you do that. The Direct Marketing Association did a study on different ways of contacting people through, you can see, email, through direct mail, through catalogs, through radio and TV. And the revenue per contact is highest among telephone calls. That when you're contacting people, it's more likely you'll reach buyers and interact with them and find out ways in which you can sell them when you meet with them in person. It also has the highest average response rates. That when you perhaps leave a voicemail message, you're much more likely to get a response if you leave the correct type of voicemail message, which I'll show you a little bit later how to do that. But it has certainly the highest return on investment index of all these different ways of promoting your products. So you have the highest the revenue per contact and the highest average response rate. So the telephone can really help you become a lot more productive in your sales efforts. So let's look at some general telephone basics here. Certainly, you do the preparation. We'll be talking a lot about preparation. And that helps your attitude also, and that you're less likely to be anxious using the phone if you're prepared, if you've done some practicing. And you've practiced the introduction that you'll use. I'll show you an example of that, about ways in which to get the conversation started. Because when that client or prospect picks up the phone, it's up to you to direct how the conversation will go. And it's a lot easier to do that if you think about that you're asking questions. You're not telling the prospects about your book right away because they don't know what they're interested in. So you have to ask questions to find out more about them and how your content can help them reach their objectives. Now, obviously, when you ask a question, you need to listen. And that's an important thing. So if you're thinking about what you're going to say next, and the buyer is talking and then says, "Well, what do you think about that, Brian?" Well, I wasn't really listening. What were you saying? It can be embarrassing. And be objective. You know that certain things that people will have bad days, and they may be a little bit gruff on the phone with you, but that's nothing to do with you. It's their situation. Or if they say, "I just can't talk now," or whatever, then say, "Okay, when should I call you back?" So you're not forcing the conversation to occur. You have that objectivity to roll with the punches, and not necessarily punches. Roll with the conversation and how you can make it more productive and effective for you. Yeah, using the telephone to inform people and educate, particularly using your telephone for selling for radio shows. and involving the listener. The more that you can ask questions, the more the listener is involved. Because when you're on the phone, you can't tell if they're multitasking, if they're doing some paperwork while you're talking, and that is certainly doesn't enhance your discussion at all. And again, you're not selling on the phone, and the stress for success is you have to have a little bit of tension, not necessarily tension in your voice, but having feeling a little tension, because that kind of gives you the edge that you need to listen carefully and to ask questions and to be in the moment, as they say. And all this helps you have some fun while you're talking. So you're smiling as you're dialing and piling up sales. So let's look at the preparation first, what you need to do before you actually make the call. Again, this will help your anxiety level and bring it down significantly if you're prepared for that. So have an objective. Know what you're going to do on the phone. If you're networking, is it to set up a meeting with the person? Is it ask for a referral? And so you prepare based upon what your objective is. And you want to be clear. It's something that your voice is clear. Your voice is direct. Your voice is uh, practiced and careful. And it's something that you're not using big words and you're not trying to impress the person, but you're trying to communicate, which is the biggest objective here. And having the flexibility of listening, because when you ask a question, you don't know which direction the conversation will take. So you have to be flexible. That's part of the preparation where you know what your response will be in various different situations. Having a good attitude that's part of a personality. You don't have to be an extrovert to be on the phone. And just the idea is that you can be an ambivert, which is part introvert, part extrovert, and you're able to rely on that personality when needed. But it's something that, in many cases, when you're calling on a prospective buyer, that person is not the prototypical rough and gruff business person that is on the other line. It's someone who is a professional, just wants to help their company succeed, wants to have their career succeed, and is open to other ways in which to make that happen. And certainly call on time. This is really important, whether it's for a radio show that you need to understand the time differences. If you're in the East Coast, well, at 9 o'clock in the morning, you're probably not going to call the West Coast to make calls. But if you're on the West Coast, then you don't want to call after 2 o'clock your time or after 3 o'clock, or if it's a 3 hour time difference. So know the time zone. Know the if you're calling a producer and the producer is producing a show that starts at 10 o'clock in the morning, well, you don't call the producer at 9:45. Maybe you call it at noon or 11:30 or 12 after the show is over, while the the producer is back in his or her office. And use a script. And that's not just to read. I'll be talking a little bit later about how to create a script that will just keep you on target, keep you moving ahead. And that can be, it's not, again, not something you read, but something that just keeps you uh, moving in the right direction. And have that energy and passion, which is having a smile in your voice also. And sometimes what I'll do is stand up while I'm talking on the phone. It helps. I can move my arms around and get that, so I get some energy and some enthusiasm in my voice. And generally, don't use a cell phone. If you can use a landline when possible, and you may use a cell phone. Obviously, if you're in an airport and your flight's canceled, you need to make some calls. That's fine. Or if you're traveling and you only have your cell phone, that's fine. But when possible, particularly for radio shows, you want to use a landline. Take notes while you're talking so you can refer back to what the prospect said. And this is again important with radio shows also, that you can remember what you've talked about or have not talked about. And sip warm water, which I just did. It really hits the spot after you're talking for a while. So that once you have this information, all this these techniques in mind, it's going to help you perform a lot better. And have the right equipment. Use a headset so you're not pressing a telephone against your ear for an hour or however long you've allocated for making your calls. And have a clear area. But I always keep an area I have my computer on when I'm talking with someone. I have their website up on the screen so I can refer to that. I have a pad next to me with a couple pens, and I have that so I can take notes. So I am organized. I have a the information from previous calls. I've scanned that, so by keeping excellent records, I have notation that the last time we talked, maybe the person had to go see her son at a soccer game, or yeah, well, so you might start off. You have to have the soccer game go, and we're talking last week, and you had to leave early. Did your son do okay in the soccer game? So that's if you have those records, you can personalize the call very easily that way, and that you can almost hear the change in the attitude of the person on the other line when you ask something like that. And don't have a phone with call waiting where you get the even if the other person doesn't hear it, it can be um, annoying to you for having that the information coming through to you. So just be uh, prepared, have that the right information, the right equipment, and know how to use that and do that right. It's important to know what you're selling. It may sound uh, odd that I'm telling you how to know your product, but you're not really talking. You're not selling books when you're talking with people. That you certainly you need to know the sizes of it because or number of units per case and the size of the case when you're talking about shipping charges, the prices for your books in different formats and different quantities. So if the buyer starts asking or asks if I buy 10,000 books, can I have them printed and delivered in 8 weeks at this price? So you know that the higher quantity, you know what the price is for 10,000 books. And I skipped over the benefits. You're not selling books. You're selling what the content does, how it helps the buyers. It may help a marketing manager sell more of their product, or it may help an HR manager make his or her employees more productive or more motivated, or reducing absenteeism. So you want to talk about how your content can benefit that person. Have endorsements, particularly uh, if the endorsing person is well known in the industry in which you're calling. That can help add a lot to the author credibility, and also explain the author's expertise in a particular topic. If you've written nonfiction on how to motivate employees, well, then you want to talk about the author's experience in doing that. And illustrations and photos. The reason I have that here, obviously, you're not going to show the person illustrations and photos over the phone, although you may if you're doing a Skype call, which I've done particularly internationally using Skype or Zoom, and which is a great tool for that. But if you can talk about the fact that your book, if you're talking an HR manager, and you're talking about how to be more productive, then you say that you have a lot of examples, a lot of charts that can show that the employees about how they can how their uh, attitude can fit in and how it can help, or you have these charts and graphs and illustrations that support what you're saying and explain what you're saying in your book. So if you can just describe the fact that you have these in your product, then that's the way in which you can use those. And know what your competition is saying, and what if they're making particular claims that are maybe unsubstantiated or maybe counterproductive of what you're saying. So you want to be able to know what they're saying, because if the buyer says, well, in this book, I wrote some books about how to get a job. So the buyers would say, how does your content compare with what color is your parachute? There's the major book back years ago. So know what competitors are saying, and know if you do have some critical information that's missing in your book that the competitors have a reason why it's missing. Maybe you feel it's not that important. If it, just because the competitors say that doesn't mean that it is critical. So you want to create your unique value proposition, UVP. Why is your content unique, and why is it valuable to this particular buyer? And also know about other promotional products. When you're selling to a corporate buyer or buyer in an association, you're not necessarily competing against other books. You may be competing against coffee mugs or umbrellas or home entertainment centers. So be able to know the cost of these other promotional products and the benefits of your products vis-a-vis these other competitive items. Know how companies use books as promotional items. There's a complete course on this. I think it's Book Selling University course 131 about how companies can use this. And Guy Action does that course, and he talks a lot about how The companies can use your book as a gift to customers or creating corporate library. These are things that the buyers want to know because they may have little or if any experience using a book as a promotional tool. So show them how it can be used as a premium. Associations may use your book as a fundraiser. And I was selling my job search books to college campuses. I went to their American Marketing Association chapter president and offered them the use of, they could buy my book at half price, buy a case at half price, and then they could use it as a fundraiser. And so they get the experience of doing a fundraiser, but also getting the revenue from that. So it could be a gift with purchase that you buy this product, you get this book as a gift as thank you. It might be your book on gardening at the garden center. People pay, buy $50 worth of products, they get a free book with it about how to garden. So that's an example of that. An ad specialty is maybe a booklet given away. Thanks for coming to my trade show booth, and here's a coupon for a free download of an ebook. And you can use that's an example of this, using a book as a coupon, or using a coupon to get a book, where they put a coupon in a product, a box of cereal or a box of 20-pound bag of dog food. They get a free download of an ebook when they open up the package. So that's the prize, patronage award, self-liquidator books as samples. Again, these are just to give you an overview and the more in-depth description in that other book selling university course by Guy that can be very helpful in explaining these, but also explaining how to use these as a promotional tool, not just what they are, but how to use them. I think it's Book Selling University Course 131. Now you want to prepare a script, and this is not something that you read to people. And I've had the telemarketers get on the line, and I'll ask a question, and they either ignore me and just keep reading, or they really get thrown off because it's not part of their script. So you don't want to just read a script. You don't want to come across as reading a script. But what I do is come up with a page that has certain keywords in it. You may have an opening, something I want to use as the opening attention getter, and it's just a couple words to remind me how to use it, because the person may pick up the phone and say, "Yeah, please hurry up. I've got to catch a flight in 10 minutes. I've got to run to catch a flight." So your whole script changes. So it's just a matter of having keywords that will. And I also, as I bring them up, I'll check it off, because if I'm making 5 or 6 calls in the morning, then if I've already talked about it, I don't want to repeat that in that same call, but I also don't want to not bring it up in a future call, so I can check it off knowing that I did already talk about it or have not talked about it. So it gives you that security that you have a consistent message, that you are hitting all the high points, and you are getting information across to your prospective buyers and making that appointment. And it gives you some momentum too. If you've had a kind of a rough call, well, it gets you back on track. Or if you had a great call, then you get that momentum going, that feeling of enthusiasm based on the fact you had a great meeting over the phone with this person. So now you can do the same in the future and then the next call. It helps you bring your points out in the proper sequence. If you need to talk about certain things, talk about the benefits first before you certainly talk about any pricing, and you want to talk about perhaps the shipping or any customization before you talk about pricing. So you have that, that you bring the points up that lead to a logical close. And again, you don't want to sell over the phone, but you certainly do want to provide information. You want to cover all the topics that you plan to discuss, whether it's on a radio show, for example, that you have different topics you want to discuss or with a different audience. So you want to have a list of those and have that information there. And if you've sent the producer of a radio show a list of questions, then you have those questions in front of you. Just have a one-word response that will help you remember what you wanted to say about that particular topic. What are the contents of a script? What is the objective of the call? Again, that's not something that you'll read to the person on the other end of the call. But what is your objective? What happened when you talked before? When you met the person? Maybe you met the person at a trade show and you're doing the telephone follow-up. So you want to remember or bring up certain things that happen at the trade show, because that person may have no idea who you are until you remind them of, well, we met when, remember, somebody spilled a cup of coffee on your table and I helped you clean it up. Oh yeah, that's right, I remember that. So the more that you can bring up the previous context, the more likely that person is to remember. And so you have the background of the company and the prospect. Obviously, that presupposes the fact you've done a little research on the company and the prospectus. So maybe you went to LinkedIn and found out that you went to the same colleges together. So make that note on your script. Just not that you're stalking the person, but you just noted that just tell the person that you went to LinkedIn just to get some background on, and notice that you did go to the same schools together or lived in the same area, whatever that may be. And just the possible uses that they may be able to use your book as a premium or as a sample. And certainly just knowing the prospect's name and have that set up so you don't mispronounce it or you don't use the wrong name, obviously. And it's important to ask the receptionist, how does that marketing manager pronounce his or her name? I get a lot of calls to Brian Jude, and I pronounce my name Judd. And I know that it's probably a telemarketing call, and they say, may I speak with Brian Jude? And maybe a brief note of what your attention-getting statement will be. How are you going to open it? Whether it's a follow-up, whether it's a networking call, maybe it's a referral, and somebody else referred you, which is a great way to open up a conversation. And I always ask you, once I give a benefit statement, here's a reason I'm calling. Do you have time to talk about it now? No, Brian, I'm heading to a meeting now. Why don't you give me a call back later this afternoon? Okay, what time should I call? Or, I'm heading out to a plane. I'm on vacation next week. Give me a call in 2 weeks. Now, if you just keep talking while that person is getting ready to catch a flight, then you've not created any rapport, and you've certainly done more damage than to it. So have that specific benefit statement also in mind or written down, so you know exactly how you're going to start it and what the benefit is to that person, particularly when you've used the phone earlier to gather information for making this call to this particular buyer, the end user. Maybe a list of questions that you want to use to get the prospect's involvement. It could be generic questions like, if you could wave your magic wand, what would you do? Or have you ever used books as a promotional item? Those are questions that can get the prospect involved, and just know what points you want to make with this prospect at this particular time in order to result in a personal meeting where you can actually close the sale. In most cases, you'll end up getting voicemail messages or getting voicemail. So, and you want to have a good, concise message. Leave a good, concise message, maybe 20 seconds, 30 seconds max, where you give the listener, your prospect, a reason to call you back. So you have to get attention very quickly, and you don't want to lead off with, I'm Brian Judd, I'm the author of this book. Lead off with saying something effective. You have content that has helped many companies such as yours increase their sales significantly, or helped many companies in your industry help them, their employees be more productive, whatever that may be. But you have that benefit statement for the particular person, and say that person's name, assuming that you know the correct pronunciation, that people like to hear their name. And if you enunciate it properly, and that you certainly want to leave a phone number to call, and then but spell out words that might be misunderstood. That if I leave my email address, it's Brian Judd at bookmarketing.com. It's Brian Judd, J-U-D, B-R-I-A-N, J-U-D. It's one D in Judd. Now it's Brian Judd at bookmarketing.com. And then it's Monday morning at 10 o'clock, and it's East Coast time. And I said, don't let your aggravation show. One time I was on vacation, and I was out for a week, and I got back and checked my voicemail messages, and on Monday I got a call. Hi, Brian, how are you? Let's set a time to meet. On Wednesday, hi, Brian, I called you Monday. Please get back to me. And Friday is a message. Brian, I've called you twice. You haven't gotten back to me. And I'm exaggerating, obviously, but you can hear the aggravation, and that's why it's important to ask the individual when you can, if this is a good time to talk or not, and then if it's not, when you can actually call back, when that person will be more likely to be able to talk with you. You don't want to tell too much. You want to get them a reason to call you back and be enthusiastic and upbeat. And calling at odd hours, that you may want to actually have a strategy of leaving voicemail messages and calling Saturday mornings or calling at 6 o'clock or so, which can actually benefit you in the sense that if you may call at 6 o'clock, and if you've had a an assistant whose job is to keep you from getting through, that person may leave at 5 o'clock, and your contact may stay. So, in the office after. So, if you call at 6 o'clock, maybe you're much more likely to get through and not get voicemail. But leave your phone number and name twice. It's I'll say you call 800-562-4357, or that is 800 job help. So I left the number twice, but in two different ways. And if they don't get the numbers, they can usually remember job help. And be prepared to talk with a human. I've done this, and I'll make 10 calls in a row and get 10 voicemail messages, and all of a sudden on the 11th call, somebody picks up and says, "Hi, may I help you?" Wow, now what do you say? So be prepared for that to happen too. Practice your phone skills. That just taping yourself, that is a good way to do it. Recording it, and you can do that on GoToMeeting or on Zoom. You can record that, and it's just like talking in a telephone. Particularly if you use Skype a lot to call internationally, then that's it's a good way to practice that and record that. You may also do that. I do this with my business partner a lot. That we'll do some role playing. We'll do a Skype call or a telephone call and just talk about how we're going to talk with people at an upcoming trade show, and we'll do a little role play. What happens if the buyer says this? And what happens if the buyer says that? And what are you going to say? And analyze your voice to correct. If you're talking too fast, which I have a tendency to do, I try to remember to slow down, but also to add some accent to your voice and to just so you're speaking clearly and concisely. So just analyze that, and the more you do that, the more effective you'll be, the more that you'll relax, the more that you can use your telephone more successfully because your tension is reduced, just at that stress for success level. So let's look about using a telephone for prospecting and making appointments, which I think is the most important use of the phone in the special sales marketing. So smile, dial, and pile up your sales. This is the way a lot of people look at cold calling, that they're afraid. They're afraid of getting rejections. They think it'll be confrontational, that they'll be calling somebody that is in a bad mood and that they'll be unpleasant. Well, certainly that could happen, but if you have a good, positive, enthusiastic, passionate, smiling voice, then it's a lot less likely to happen. Particularly if you're well prepared and if the prospect knows that you're prepared. And this is how customers see cold calling, but note that cold calling done poorly. If you do cold calling properly, as you will after this course, then this will not occur. But this is something that they think of it as a nuisance. If they just picked up the phone inadvertently and there you are, which has happened to me, not frequently, but I picked up the phone before it even rang and there's somebody else on there. But they look at it as maybe being pressurized, or if there's a script that you're not being totally honest and maybe being a little tricky because your script is designed to get the recipient to say certain things. So this is that the customers may pick up the phone thinking this is going to happen. So when you're prepared, then it's much more likely they'll realize that you're a professional, that you're prepared, and you kind of catch them off guard because you're doing everything that's right, that you have a nice, honest, open, customized opening statement. Not you respectful to them. It's always Mr. and Ms. and told to say first names. I do that a lot, and I say, oh, I'm Mr. Jones or Miss Smith. Oh, you can call me George or Betty or whatever. So then that's also helping you build that rapport and that trust level, and helping establish the relationship over time. So cold calling, when done properly, can be a very effective way of succeeding on the telephone. So before you call, know your prospect's industry. It may sound odd, but if your book is appropriate for different industries, they may have different benefits, different pressures on the industry. That just read the Wall Street Journal today, or whatever paper, New York Times, or whatever paper, Washington Post, or LA Times, or wherever you are, that you, if some major happening in the industry, you can talk about that. You talk about the fact how your content can help uh, the rise uh, in a particular ingredient, maybe uh, iron, or there's an article in today's paper about potash that was price going up on that. Anyway, the more that you know that, and what's good about that is you, when you're organizing your calls, you may want to call a particular industry for an hour or for whatever time limit. So the that you you're talking in the automobile industry this hour, and then tomorrow you talk about the healthcare industry, talk to buyers in the healthcare industry, and then following day in a different industry, just to, that maintains your familiarity with that industry as you're talking. You know about the prospect's business. That this article is about Harley Davidson now, that they're having their sales are going down because a lot of their sales are to the older group that are not boomers but millennials, and that are growing out of the motorcycle habit. So they're going to other modes of transportation. So it's something that, if you understand that, then you can talk about how your book can be used as an incentive to help sell more motorcycles. The decision makers and your allies and adversaries, that when you make a presentation, you'll notice that certain people are on your side and certain people are against you, and not against you, against your proposal. So when you're doing a follow-up, that you know which is which, and how you're going to talk with them, and how you're going to open the conversation, how you're going to respond, and what questions you're going to ask them. And again, knowing your content, knowing all about your benefits, and your competitive claims, and your unique value proposition to this particular prospect. And so it's not, you don't just pick up the call, pick up the phone and dial, and leave a message, and pick up the phone and dial and leave a message. I hope this is coming across, that you are regularly preparing for each call, so you come across so that person thinks that they're the only person you're calling that day. Timing your calls. What I do is I rank my prospects in A, B, and C priority. That A's are my top prospects. That if I get to talk with them, I'll end up selling them 10,000 books. The others are probably less likely to buy, or if they buy, they may buy a case of books or something. And I'll call those people first, just to get experience on the phone, to get the types of questions that they'll ask, and be prepared. So when I call my best contacts, I'm a lot more prepared with what they may be saying, and I'll have answers ready when they ask questions. And it's really good if you can avoid telephone tag, where I call you and leave a message, you call back and leave a message, and I call you and leave a message. If you can say that, okay, this is Wednesday at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I'll be here the rest of the afternoon in Connecticut Eastern time, and I'll be out tomorrow, but I'll be in all day Friday. So please, why don't you give me a call at 10 o'clock Friday morning? So now you know when to expect the call, and that you're there, so you eliminate telephone tag. And don't negotiate on the phone. As I've said this several times, this is not for selling. This is for creating the atmosphere for a sale to take place. But then you actually meet in person when possible to close the order, because then you can see the reactions of the person. You can, if there are multiple people there, you can see what the looks are between them, and being aware of time zones before talking about the whatever time zone you are in, and making your calls appropriately. And you have different types of calls every day. So you're not just making these prospecting calls every day, particularly if you feel uncomfortable doing that. You may decide to make networking calls one day, and then next day follow-up calls, and the next day prospecting calls, the next day information gathering calls. But the more that you do that, the much more likely that you are to be effective when you're making your that particular call. When you get somebody on the phone, and say up front how long it could take. I've got some information that could help you increase your sales. It's proven to do so in a variety of similar companies. And just take me about 10 minutes now to give you a quick overview. Do you have some time now, or should I give you a call back? So if the person knows they may have a meeting coming up in an hour, but they can afford 10 minutes now, so they'll listen to you. And then watch the time. If you say it's only going to take 10 minutes, then just take 10 minutes. If you start going over it, then you start to get the prospect aggravated that you either they feel that you've duped them, or the fact that you just don't care about that your 10-minute time limit. But once you get started, it'll be easier. That you'll find that it just becomes a habit, and you just do it. It's just much easier to do the more that you do. So how do you find the contact information? There are a couple ways. One that here's one the uh, is Manta.com is a registry of millions of small businesses that they have. You just scroll down, and you have the uh, different types of industries. So say you have a book for real estate people, you want them to use your book as a gift. That when people um, sell their home or buy a home, that the realtor can give them a book as a thank you. So here you've got 1.6 million companies under real estate. So you want to be able to organize that a little bit better. So you go up here, and see, this gives you the contact information, the telephone number. In many cases, you click on the logo and you go to their website. But just go here. Maybe you have a book, a gift with purchase would be this, and then you put in the city near Dallas, Texas. So then that just gives you, or maybe Chicago, or obviously you understand whatever city in which you are living. You want to make these calls so you can stop over and see people. Well, that's a great way of getting their phone numbers and names of people to contact. And it's a great source of information. Directories, there are all kinds of directories. There's the directory of directories where you can go and get a directory for your industry, whether it's manufacturers in New England or whether it's uh, skiing places in Utah. So you can get a directory of these, or just do an internet search. And you can go here and go to the internet and go to Google and put in, you want to know the director of marketing for Walmart. This comes up here. So you go here and come down and you find out what leadership here, who are the leaders of Walmart. Well, here are the people that you can contact. We find out which ones would be. You don't want to call international. You want to do the U.S. first. So you want to find out who is the director of marketing. So you keep scrolling down and you find out who's this. Keep looking for that person. That that gives you the names of people and their contact information. So then that you have that search, and you go. Uh, well, you can go to individuals, and then you can contact the person, and sometimes the individual's name will come up here. Like there's Tony Rogers of Walmart, who's Senior Vice President and Chief Marketing Officer. So that might be a person you would contact. But how do you get his email address? How do you get his phone number? Go here. Then you go to hunter.io. And what this does is help you find out the email address. So you put in, you want to contact Tony Rogers at Walmart. So you go walmart.com. And you want to find out the email address. So the most common is first dot last name. So you put Tony.Rogers, or you maybe put T.Rogers, and you send these out. And so it gives you a good idea about how to contact the person via email. So that is the hunter.io. Or you might go to LinkedIn to see if Tony's there or someone else is there. And this comes up, and it'll be, when it does come up, it'll be, you can search up here for the person's name, or you can once you do the search, you go to their profile and see contact information. And ooh, I want to contact Brian Judd. Here's his phone number. Here's his email address. So you have a lot of that information to do that. So LinkedIn is hunter.io, internet searching, Manta, the directories on your particular industry. So the means to come up with the contact information is there. It takes a little bit of search, but again, but what you when you're contacting these people, if you're trying to reach someone who has the potential of buying thousands of your books, well, you spend a little of time in finding out this information. So it's something that it takes time, but it's something that will provide great benefit for doing that. Now that what's called the screen in the industry, the gatekeeper, the person whose job is to keep you away, to not bother him or her, his or her boss. So that the idea you have to get through these people, and you don't do it by saying this. I need to talk to Miss Jones. It's a personal call when it's not, because you'll never get through that person again. But you kind of become friends with them. Have the same kind of opening statement that if you're calling. I'm in Connecticut. I'm calling somebody in St. Louis. I say, "Wow, I was just out there last week. Is it still as clear or as rainy as it was?" Or so you just try to have a little bit of a personal basis before you say, "Let me talk to your boss." Well, you're not going to say that anyway. But say that perhaps if the person you want to speak to wrote an article in the industry trade magazine, you want to contact Ms. Jones on the article that she wrote. Just talk to her about that. It's really well done. May I speak with her, please? Well, I need your help. I'm trying to get through to Ms. Jones. I've called several times. What's a good time to call her? That's just by saying I need your help. A lot of times makes people want to help you. And Mr. Smith asked me to talk with Ms. Jones. So once you have that referral, that's a much better way to get through than the assistant calls her boss and says that, Brian's here. And Ms. Jones asked him to give you a call about something. Okay, we'll take the call. Or to follow up on a letter, I told Mr. Smith I'd call him at this time, and just make the gatekeeper aware that you have some valuable information that the boss really wants to know, or should want to know. When your prospect picks up, say you get through, you've done that, you have that referral, which is a great way to get through, and you have that positive in your voice, the enthusiasm, the confidence in your voice. But you just confirm you're talking with the right person. This Mr. Smith, the director of marketing for it's Tony Rogers, the director of marketing for Walmart. Good, Mr. Rogers, it's a pleasure to meet you. And that I have some information that's proven to retailers such as Walmart increase their store traffic and their profit. And so I just have some information. May I talk to you about that now? It'll only take about 15 minutes at most. And if you prefer, I can call you back if you don't have time now. Or do you have time to talk now? So they've got the hook, and you place the hook, and then when they say, okay, I'll talk to you now. You piqued my interest. Go ahead, I'll talk to you. So you personalize the conversation. Talk about how he did a little LinkedIn research, and you found out that the person went to University of Colorado, and I went there too. It's a good school for our background. Is that right, Mr. Smith, or is that Mr. Rogers? I forget you're talking, Mr. Rogers, Tony. So but just be prepared to talk with a human when you get through the gatekeeper, and just stick to one strong idea. Don't try to bring up two or three different topics. You've done your research. You know that Walmart is trying to introduce a new product, a new financial product for the holiday season. So you've got a content that's perfect to help the employees make that transition. So you talk about that. So say your name clearly. You want to make a good first impression. So you say your name is Brian Judd, and use it what I call a solution statement. You know who your target is. You know what benefits they want, what results they want. So it's I help who want get. I help major retailers who want to increase store traffic get more profit and more inventory turns, and so that's I help who want get based on the need of your perspective on your person you're calling. And talk about the other person. Don't say I'm Brian Judd, I'm the author of this book. You want to begin the conversation about the other person. As I just said, that you have this information that is helpful to retailers and how they can increase their store traffic. Is this something you want to do, Mr. Rogers? Well, asking the question, they listen to the answer, and then So you keep repeating. Don't say, Mr. Rogers, let me ask you a question. Okay, Mr. Rogers, let me do this. You just periodically repeat the person's name, and then Tony, he's going to say, well, just call me Tony. And so you just then, okay, Tony, thank you. And then, obviously you're prepared of what you're going to say, but make that good first impression. And I also think you have almost two chances to make a first impression. If you're doing the prospecting by telephone, you say, okay, will you be at the trade show next week? I will. Okay, I'll meet you there, say 10 o'clock on Tuesday. Does that work? And then so that you have that uh, almost two chances to make that first impression on the telephone and then in person. So it's just a Judd theory on first impressions. Here's some examples of opening statements. You don't want to say, "I wanted to talk to you about the ways in which this happened." So what? I don't care what you want to do. What's in it for me? So instead, you're saying, your company can become more profitable with this idea. May you have a few minutes now to talk about it? So that's an example of talking from the other person's perspective and not from what you want to accomplish, but how you want to help the buyer improve some way. I read the article. This is what we talked about before about getting through the screen. And if that's in the case, certainly that's where you want to start off your conversation. If you use that to get through the gatekeeper, or you want to you're calling a follow up on the recent email. If you called it at 6 o'clock and you get directly to the person you want to talk to, then you might open this way. I sent an email to you yesterday. Did you get that? Oh, you didn't? Okay, let me just very briefly tell you what I had in mind, and then talk about that. Certainly, working off a referral, that's the best way to do it. If you can have someone else, a mutual person that some of you both know, and then you would use that person's name if that person, in fact, really did give you the referral and the permission to use his or her name. So this is kind of a fun technique of mirroring the prospect. I was doing a radio show one time in New York, and I was talking a little bit faster than I guess my regular speed. And then about an hour later, I was doing a call somewhere, a radio show somewhere, say Alabama, and I started talking like this, and I remember the host said, "Whoa, son, slow down." And I realized that it's a little bit of a slower uh, volume or a slower pace of my talking, so I had to slow down a little bit, which I try to do that. You may have noticed here that I feel that I'm talking a little bit too fast, and I have to slow down. I'll give you a little acronym later about what I used to help that. But listen for words and phrases that you hear the prospect on the phone saying, "Well, but at the end of the day, this is what's going to happen. At the end of the day, this is what I need. At the end of the day, this is how it's going to work." Well, then when you're talking, the idea of mirroring that is to use those words or phrases and you say, I understand exactly what you're saying. And I feel the same way. And at the end of the day, we'll have everything to you on time and in the right customization. So that just helps the rapport a little bit. And so you're matching the speed. I just talked about that of the radio show. But using their favorite word. I remember one person that I was talking with kept saying, "Voila! This we tried this and voila!" And he said that two or three times in the course of a half hour. And at the end, when I was talking about it, I said, "Well, when we get to use this product, voila! Your salespeople will be much more productive." I could tell by the giggle in his voice how he knew what I was doing, and it just helped to build some rapport that way. We talked before about asking questions and using closed-end questions to start with. So you're directing the conversation. These are short questions. Have you ever used books before as a sales promotional item? No, I haven't. That's the answer. So then you say, well, what have you used? And how did that work for you? So then just you go to open-end questions, but these are more for fact-finding that do you have a sales promotion coming up? Yes. Will you be at the trade show next week? Yes. So these are just questions to direct the conversation and to clarify the issues. Say something to the effect of, "Did I explain that properly?" Yes or no. So, or testing understanding. That okay, we talked about the customization. I want to make sure I got that across right. That we'll put your logo on the rear cover. Is that correct? So, and to get commitment, certainly. That's something that if may I give you a call next Thursday at 3 o'clock, or can we meet at the trade show next week at maybe 4 o'clock, or whatever. But the idea is that it's using closed-end questions and not multiple choice. May I meet you next Tuesday at 3 or Wednesday at 4, or how about maybe Thursday morning at 9? Well, just go with one first. If they say yes, okay, that's fine, then do it. If they say no, then go to the next alternative. But then once you have set the direction, then ask an open-ended question. If you could wave your magic wand, how would you implement a promotional program? Or given your last promotional campaign, what worked and what didn't work, and how would you change it? Don't ask those questions right in a row. Ask them, that when did you have your last promotional campaign? Oh, last March. How did it go? Oh, so there's two different types of questions. What was the best campaign you ever did? Why? So the more that you can use that later when you come back to talk to the person, you can explain how your book, your content, can have the same results in that. And do you want to increase your sales or revenue or profits? And those are three different campaigns, three different strategies, and you have to be able to respond to that so your proposal leads to the objective that the buyer wants to have. So how do you use probes? One is to clarify. I hear what you're saying, but I'm not sure I understand what you mean. So a great question here is that's I want to make sure that I understand that. Is this what you said? That you said that you don't want customization, or you want your logo on the rear cover? No, I said I wanted it on the front cover. Oh, okay. I'm glad we clarified that issue. For developing it, I'd like to hear more about that. So the question might be, that's really a really important point. I hadn't thought about that before. Could you tell me a little bit more about that? So then you're getting the person more involved, certainly, and you're developing that, if that's a direction in which you want to go, certainly. Then, so okay, we've agreed on the quantity, we've agreed on the pricing. Now let's talk about the shipping. Do you want these all to go to one place, or do you have several different shipping locations? So now you're taking the conversation in a different direction and testing it. Does that say something effective? That okay? That I hear what you're saying, and what I want to see, you want to find out if they are reacting positively to it or negatively, or they have some skepticism. So you want to ask about that. Does that make sense? Is that clear? So that the more that you can get that, you don't want to say that if there's any miscommunication, you take the blame for it. Something to the effect that I've tried to explain this before to other people, and sometimes it seems like I didn't say clearly enough. So I just want to make sure that I'm getting through. Is that okay? And then, so those are different ways of using these types of proofs. Some examples. This is great information, but I was looking for something smaller I might use as a premium. Well, if this information was available as a booklet, would you be interested in using it? Probably. Sales are down this month. So see, the idea that you're asking a question to answer not the objection, but the problem that the buyer or the prospect brings up. This is actually what happened to me, that I was trying to sell my job search books to colleges, and they didn't want a book. The students didn't want to pay $14.95. So I just took out individual chapters on resumes, on cover letters, and interviewing, and made a little booklet out of it. And the colleges would buy 10,000 at a time with each different title. So it was something that just by asking that question resulted in some major sales for me. And you can do the same thing. So you want to shift your summary away from making the sale. You don't want to, when you start talking to somebody, you don't want to think about, here's how many books I can sell. What you want to think about is how you can use your content to help the prospect solve a problem. So you're being a helper. You're not trying to make just pitch all the time. You're asking questions and getting the people involved with it. So you're by doing that, you let the prospect know that you're talking with them now. You're not thinking ahead about how many books you're going to sell. By doing that, it's a pressure-free you'll atmosphere. You'll feel more relaxed, and so will your prospect. And you connect with people that you're not just that people don't think you're just working through the list of people you had to call this hour, but you really by doing your homework that you know about the prospect and you knew about the issues that they're experiencing in their industry, in their business. So your objective is to create and build that relationship and use the phone to do that for following up or for networking or just for checking in to see how they're doing. And you may sense that pressure, that or tension. Well, that's something that you'll get used to, and you'll find out how to sense that as you're talking with people, and using natural language, not the high pressure terms that salespeople use about how we can close the order, how we can get the books to you next week. If I really work hard at it, I'll get them to you. That you don't talk like that. You want to let the person know that you are, in fact, building that relationship, and that you know what their problems are, and that you understand their problems. So use the telephone to gather information. You've talked with, you send your email out, and the person says, email us back. Yeah, call me tomorrow at 2. So you want to use the phone to gather information for your proposal. Your proposal is your recommendation. When you meet the people, you want to certainly make your recommendation based on what they want to occur. So you use that information to plan your presentation and agree on the process that I'll meet with you next week. And then if that works out right, then we'll meet with your director of marketing, your supervisor on the following Tuesday or the following week or something like that. And then so you're finding out what their process is and how you can work within that and know what their objectives are, what their outcome that they want, and that you are in fact dealing with the people who are the decision makers when you get in there to make your pitch. So now we'll get the different topic of using your phone to conduct radio shows. These can be taped or live or call in, but you're using your phone for all these. That call in, but I mean call in is that when you're talking on the phone on a live show, that they may have their audience members calling in. So that's obviously not going to happen on a tape show. You can do those both over the phone. So you want to deliver your content vocally and visually. You have the words you're going to say based on the preparation that you've done. Now you have to deliver them vocally and visually. What I have when I do a presentation on the radio, I have a little card that has the word voices on it. So that helps me keep my volume up. I'm always talking right into the mouthpiece of the phone or into the headset. I'm talking from the other's perspective, whether it's the person on the radio show or from the buyer. I add that inflection to it, so it's not just a monotone speaking the same voice all the time, but adding the inflection, accenting important words, and that helps demonstrate some confidence. Also, that I have the ability to answer the questions because I call my C prospects first. I'm much more confident when I call my A prospects. My enunciation is clear and concise, basically because I'm talking more slowly, and I enunciate the words better. So, so you see how just this one acronym can help you deliver your message vocally on the telephone. Visually, smile. The name of this class is Smile, Dial, and Pile Up Sales. That starts out with a smile. You have that in your voice, and stand up. I can't do that now because I'm talking into the computer. But if I had a headset on, then I could stand up and gesture more and create these word pictures. Like instead of saying just think of a dog, well, you may be thinking of a Cocker Spaniel or a German Shepherd or Great Dane or a Black Lab or whatever. But if I say think of a junkyard dog, the junkyard German Shepherd that's guarding the gate and somebody's trying to get in, this dog is growling and saliva is dripping from his mouth and the teeth are bared. Well, everybody has the same image. So you want to be able to build those word pictures to help the person on the other end of the phone visualize what you're talking about. Using a telephone for networking, this is a really important thing to do. That you have that just keeping in touch with people, that you're setting up, working off a referral, but that you have the same preparation, that you know what you want to accomplish, and you know what, if you're looking for specific information about an industry or about an upcoming event or about some other individual. And if you're working off a referral, again, that's a great way to do some networking, but you're trying to expand your base of prospects, of information, trying to get referrals, trying to get testimonials. And so the more that you know about the people involved with it, the referring person and the person you're calling, and shows you how to get some background information about the person. So these are the things that you really need to do in your preparation for your telephone call, that you want to be able to, uh, when you're doing it for networking, you have pretty much the same objectives and preparation, but some different things about the quid pro quo, that what you can do if this person is giving you a lot of information, what can you do to reciprocate? And then how will you follow up? So this checklist may help you be more productive at your networking. There's some ways to get people to remember you when you're networking and they've never met you before, or that you maybe you met them briefly and you're doing a follow-up call. So to have that, be distinctive. Have some that example before I gave you before about the spilling the coffee on the trade show. That's something that makes you more distinctive. It helps that person remember who you are. And by being fully present, you're listening, you're responding, you're asking the questions, but you're listening to the answers, and you're following up on that, and you're maybe going in a totally different direction. You have just come across as you're really interested in the other people, and you're interested in helping them solve their problems. So that helps you both relax. But it's up to you to lead the conversation. When you get the person on the phone, you're the one that's you call, so you're the one that's creating the closed end questions leading into the open end question. Give them the takeaway, something that they can remember you by, and something that might be a business card, it might be some very important piece of information that you gave them. And when you're doing your networking, you want to be brief. It's something that you're just trying to catch up with people, and you can do it more frequently. You may give them a call every couple of months, or you may found an article that's really important to them, and you just want to let them know. And so you have a nice, friendly voice, and certainly you respect their time. Being brief helps you do that. And then give people more than they expect. You give them 10 ways to help people, then give them 11. People will respond to that and recognize you as that person. Follow-up is very important. After the order is placed, that's many times that's when the process begins, because then now you've got to make sure that everything was done on time. That there's a problem, make sure that you communicate that to your prospect very quickly too, so you can let the person know there may be a delay in the shipping, that they had to, there was a trucker strike and they can't get the product to you. You're trying to find a different way of doing it. So that you're positive, even if it's a negative topic, you're very positive and enthusiastic about solving it. So, and don't just direct people to your website. That's a real turnoff, or put off, I should say. That you want to be able to, when you're on the phone and you have somebody, you finally get to them, talk to them, and help them make the right decision for both of you. And then if they want email, they want you to send something to them, ask them, do you want me to fax it? Do you want me to email it to you? Or what I've done sometimes, I'm saying, well, I'm out in your parking lot right now. I'm calling you. I can just run it right up. That usually catches them by surprise. And there's been a major prospect. I haven't done that. If I'm at a trade show and I go there a day early or stay there a day late and rent a car, and I can drive around and talk with prospects there. And I'll say, I'm in your parking lot right now. I'll be right up. And then make sure you set a time for the next contact, that people expect your call, and a way of getting through the gatekeeper. So that's it. I hope you've had a lot of good tips on how to smile, dial, and pile up sales. I think that the more that you can do on the telephone, the more it's going to lead to your sales when you meet the prospective buyer in person. So I hope you enjoyed this course. If you have any questions, certainly contact me, and I will do what I can to help. Thank you, and good luck selling your books.